we now have an opportunity to move to our discussion. And I want to ask the first question. I got the impression, Kathy and Wayne, that the main motivation of these motivated workers in this feral cat population control effort is welfare of the cats. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
Also, too, the volunteers who work so diligently in these programs, they're concerned about population issues as well. They see this as a viable method to decrease the population.
So yeah, so but why? So if the welfare of the cats, you mentioned nuisance, and what I had raised initially as wildlife concerns, it was mentioned. It seemed third in priority in terms of motivation. So, Kathy, would you say that that was accurate?
Can you rephrase the question?
The concern for the ecological impact of the feral cats seemed to be not the principal motivation of those who are involved in the effort to control the populations. Not the principal motivation.
I would say that a lot of people come to this effort because of their own experiences in their neighborhoods, that they see the cats out hungry and having kittens. They may not see the predation.
But did you not just turn around and tell us that the feral cats are actually not bad off and living okay lives?
Actually, when you spay and neuter them, they have the potential to live much better lives. Cats that are constantly in search of food in order to maintain pregnancy and birth, that's a more difficult existence for them.
Seems like, yeah, I think that one of the issues is that people see hungry animals or perceive them to be hungry. They want to feed them. And of course, as a biological matter, if animals are more nutritionally satisfied and fit, they're going to be more successful at reproduction. So if you want to feed them, responsible people, I think, are also going to try to sterilize the animals to minimize.
Now, but by the way, I'm not criticizing the motivation yet. I'm just trying to shine a lens on it and understand it. There was Kathy Makalinsky made an excellent point. Is, even if you consider the lives of feral cats to be, not optimal, just even maybe a brutal existence, that's what exists in nature. When I recently just came back with a group of students looking at wolves in Yellowstone, and the biologists out there describe their lives as short and brutal, because they have to prey on animals that kick. They have to fight with other wolves. They have to put up with cold, and so the wild conditions are not at all like what we would consider optimal. But it is. But in any event, an excellent question related to this came from the audience. Back to my concern about impact on wildlife. The question has to do with: was it not the case that in a pre-human world, there were many more predators that we have since eradicated, so that the feral cats that do in fact prey on birds may not actually be tipping the balance off of what would otherwise be occurring in nature?
Well, I think there are so many impacts on wildlife. I mean, wildlife are facing a huge array of pressures. I listed a small number of them: habitat destruction. They're killed by automobiles, wild animals. I mean, it's probably hundreds of millions of wild animals are killed on the roads every year, and they're facing all sorts of threats. I mean, I think it's definitely a plausible line of argument that cats they kill, which is obviously a welfare issue for the victim, and it can cause, especially in island ecosystems and other areas where you may not have had much predation there. I mean, you don't get big predators on a lot of islands. You can't get there. So the cats function as an apex predator, and they're introduced.
Does Warren Johnson?
Yeah, I'm really happy and somewhat satisfied in the way that this is beginning to be addressed in a scientific manner. I think there's a lot of trained wildlife biologists out there that know how to approach these problems, and I guess what I would really like to see is, with some of these efforts, establishing a baseline, then going in and seeing what the result is. A little bit more of of those kinds of things so that we're not left just guessing as much.
Right, so this is another topic where there are more questions than there are answers, and the very fundamental question that almost was raised by your combined presentations is to what degree feral cat populations should be controlled, to what is the motivation, and then once you can clearly answer that question, and then test the efficacy and the impact on all these issues.
But there's a good way to empower. I mean, we talked about the volunteers and the power of that to put also in the hands of those folks. You mentioned microchips or other ways of monitoring what's happening in the community.
Mm-hmm.
That might be a nice way to add to that, to organize mini studies, so to speak, so that one understands, at least in that context, what the issues are. Because I suspect that's going to vary, depending on multiple things. It's not going to be a one-size-fits-all.
Marcia Levine.
To further fuel the controversy, has anyone
Uh,
looked at the positive effects in controlling the rodent population from these feral cat populations? Because I know we're losing more birds, but we're also losing more disease-carrying rodents.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, so the again, more question than answers. The full impact and picture that here, it needs to be better understood. Kathy Makalinski.
Just wanted to mention that there have been some studies, most notably on university campuses, where over an extended period of time they have implemented trap-neuter return along with removal of socialized cats, and that has provided long-term benefit. But also it's based on the environment too. It would be nice to have further studies based on different environments to see what combination of efforts is going to work best.
Kathy Makalinski, I'm sorry, James Carl.
I wanted to ask Kathy and Wayne, there's been an evolution, as I understand it, in the thinking with trap, neuter, and return, and so many organizations advocated trap, neuter, and return with managed colonies, so that when the animals were trapped and returned, they were returned where there was a care provider with guaranteeing some kind of, at least minimum standards of care. Now with this whole feral cat freedom movement, where we're seeing communities like Jacksonville saying that their animal control people now are trapping animals that might have been called in as, there's a stray animal in my neighborhood, that cat is trapped and returned to that environment based on largely what you were saying about the work that Julie has done, Julie Levy and some of her compatriots, saying that many of these cats trapped in trap, neuter, and return are doing quite well. They seem to have good body conditions, seem to be healthy. But now we're seeing this evolution in the trap, neuter, and return where there now isn't necessarily a care provider. And I wondered what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, I've heard of those programs in Jacksonville and a couple of other areas that are implementing them. And they're mostly in an effort to decrease the killing that occurs within their shelters. They're directly diverting those cats into TNR programs. And I think that if that cat appears upon entry to a TNR program where it's going to be neutered and is in good health, then we can assume that that cat is surviving in a manner that fulfills some welfare criteria, even though we have not identified a caregiver for that cat. So, in my opinion, I think that's a way to increase the life-saving capacity of our community resources.
And I do think that, maybe I'll weave back to that, but I do think that the folks who are really investing meaningfully as public animal care and control agencies in just picking up cats randomly and then bring them to the shelter and effectively killing them, I doubt that's really going to have much of a population effect because the remaining cats are going to be out there and they can fill that void pretty quickly. It's that management piece that I do think is really, really important.
My concern is that people are advocating this and actually exporting that idea to other communities. And I'm worried about the lack of data. What are we doing? We get one snapshot, one time. This cat looks great. Maybe yesterday it left its home, and it looks great now. But what's its long-term risk of being? And I don't know the answers to these questions.
But what's the alternative?
Well, the alternative is euthanasia.
Yeah, that's.
Barbara Carr.
You know, 10 years ago, all the feral cats that were brought to us, it was about 900 a year, we euthanized, okay? Then we started looking more at the feral cat issues, and so for a year, we looked at the bodies of all the cats that came to us, feral cats, and we found 73% of them to have good weight. We only took feral cats with no known caretaker. And they all had good coats, good teeth, good weight, 73%. 73% of the owned cat population I get in is not healthy, okay? And so at that point, I went to the board and said, why are we killing these cats? And since that date, we have not accepted any feral cats. Now, Feral Cat Focus at the same time got going in the community and has really helped with the feral cats out there. But, with us not killing any of them, I haven't seen huge new problems with feral cats in our community. And I don't know, Kathy, what do you think? Do you think we have more feral cat problems since we stopped killing cats?
There's some feral cat focused people in the audience who could address that, I'm sure. I do not think so. And the one other point that I wanted to make about that issue was that if shelters are not taking in these free-roaming cats, housing them for 5 days, and then ultimately euthanizing them, they can, in fact, use their resources much more effectively to care for the animals that they are charged with dealing with. They can utilize resources for cat enrichment programs and also to better be able to treat the illnesses and the injuries that come to them from the cats that are admitted.
Well, and the other thing is a group like Barbara has, with her as a leader who cares about animals, she's not going to do it. I mean, she's only going to do the trap, neuter, and return. She's not just going to do the trap and kill anymore. So you cannot assume that the labor investments, whether they're made in Jacksonville or any other community, would be commensurate if it's going to result in the death of the animal. So that's where the conservation advocates who are concerned about wildlife, I think, are really misguided in this area, because you cannot flip that incredible volunteer labor force to engage in that activity if it's going to result in the death of the animal. And there's no alternative. I mean, who's going to do it? If it's not the Jacksonville Humane Society or the Animal Care and Control, who's going to get those cats? No one.
I think that's an excellent summary of the answer to the question that I posed. When I asked originally about the motivation of the people involved was precisely to come to understand that statement that you just made. Okay, well, so now we have had some really excellent questions posed by members of the audience. I'm aware of that. I have them here, and I do intend to try to get to them. But I also am going to try to stay on schedule. We've now come up to our lunch breaks. And everybody, I'll see you back here at 12:30. Thank you very much.